Hello and welcome to today's briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Talia Dekel, CEO. As Israelis prepare to mark Holocaust Remembrance Day, we continue to monitor developments by regimes attempting to revise history, and as calls such as never again ring slightly different 18 months after October 7th. Meanwhile, the US is currently negotiating with Iran, a country whose leadership has called time and again for the erasure of the Jewish state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strongly opposed the previous talks under President Obama and later applauded President Trump, then in his first term, for pulling out of the JCPOA. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is now scheduled to engage Iran directly for the third time this coming Saturday. Our guest today is Sima Shine, head of the Iran program at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv. Previously, she was head of research and evaluation at the Mossad and served in the research division of the military intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us, Sima, today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Earlier this month, Netanyahu, sat himself with the president at a press conference, and the latter announced a direct channel of communication between Washington and Tehran. What do you believe Israel's official position right now is vis-a-vis the talks?
So let me start by saying some words where we stand, where the dialogue, the negotiations are, where they are from both sides, the American and the Iranian, and then I'll of course relate to Israel. So first of all, as you said, we are before the third round. It's interesting that the plan was that today the working level delegations will meet, but probably something happened, so they are going to meet on Saturday together with the heads of the delegation, Mr. Witkoff and Foreign Minister Arakshi. Now, first of all, both sides are saying that the talks are developing in a good atmosphere and in a positive direction. We don't know a lot of details, and there is no, might be that there are not so many details yet, but what we can already say is several points. One is that on the American side, it seems that there is a decision to go for an agreement that is less than dismantling the Iranian program. That we understood also from the Iranian side, saying that this wasn't the demand that was put before them during the meetings. As we all know, there was a debate within the American administration between those who thought that dismantlement should be the demand and those that saw that an agreement that allows Iran and actually accepts Iran a right to enrich uranium, which is the most important element on the Iranian side. And this is something Iran is not going to give in. Now, on the Israeli side, we heard Prime Minister Netanyahu saying the Libyan model, which is dismantling. Of course, there is no comparison between the Libyan case and the Iranian one. That is a huge program, and in Libya it was something very small at the very beginning, and but the model is this one. The Iranians have said, and the foreign minister has said very explicitly, it wouldn't be the Libyan model. It wouldn't be also the Emirate model, which is the model that the Emirates are getting nuclear reactors with, and they are not enriching on their soil, and they are getting the fuel for the reactors from outside. So Iran has said openly and in a very clear way, it wouldn't be the Libyan case, it wouldn't be the Emirate case. Iran will enrich. And this is probably the basis for the agreement, the legitimacy of Iran to enrich uranium on its soil. This is very important. It was important in 2013 and then in 2015 in the JCPOA, and it is important today. It seems that the American side has accepted it. We'll see how Israel will react to that, but for the time being, this is the basis for the negotiations. The other thing that we might understand from what was said here and there is that there is a willing and acceptance on the Iranian side to take out the high enriched uranium. 60%, I don't know if also the 20%, but probably might be also to get it out of Iran to a third country, probably Russia, as it was in the JCPOA. And we had some Iranians saying that they will not accept it. They will prefer to see it on Iranian soil, but under the inspection of the IAEA. I don't think the Americans will accept it, and I think it's easy for Iran to give in on and to compromise on this issue. So this is the second thing that we might understand from what comes out from the dialogue. There is also the issue of guarantees. The Iranians want to get a guarantee that no American administration will get out of the agreement, will leave the agreement. The question here is two ways. One is it going to be something that has to be ratified by Congress and the Majlis, the parliament in Iran? I don't know. It might be difficult to ratify it in Congress. So that's one issue on guarantees. The other one is sometimes the Iranians are saying, if we leave the 60% in Iran, this is a guarantee that if the US leaves the agreement, we can use this material, or that the Russians will allow us to get it back if the Americans are leaving the agreement. So these are, I think, the two issues that we perhaps might have some indication indications to the direction of the dialogue and perhaps of the limits of the understanding. Other issues, which are very many issues, are not there. And another point I want to mention before opening to questions is the issue of the IAEA. As we all know, the General Secretary of the IAEA, Mr. Grossi, was in Rome. He did not participate in the negotiations, but probably met with both sides. I know that he met with the Americans. He was yesterday, I think, in Washington. And I also saw that Arakshi had a phone call with him. So he will be very important. His agency will be very important once there is an agreement, because one of the biggest problems that we have today with Iran, with the program, is that there is a vacancy of 3 years, 3 to 4 years, that the agency didn't have full control on everything that was happening in the project, especially when it comes to construction of advanced centrifuge and also of some other details. No cameras were there. That was one of there were several steps that Iran took in order to show its reluctance of the on one hand, leaving the agreement, but on the other hand, the resolutions that were accepted in the Board of Governors in the IAEA. So this will be a huge problem, and which is related to the program. But of course, there are other problems as previous issues that Iran didn't answer. Undeclared places where some sorts of material were found. Iran doesn't have an answer to that, doesn't want to give an answer to that, because it is something that was done in violation of its obligation under the NPT. So here we stand before Saturday, the third round, and we'll see where it develops, what direction it takes.
Thank you for that. So just a couple of follow-up questions from what you said before we start answering some of the other questions. You talked a little bit about the monitoring mechanism or lack thereof. What would be such a mechanism that would be acceptable by the international parties that you think is a feasible approach to take?
You mean inspection?
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, going back to all the inspections that were under the JCPOA, which were quite intrusive and good. But there are some issues. I don't think we have to get into the details. There are some issues that, according to the JCPOA, for instance, if the agency had some information about a location that was not declared by Iran, it could ask to go there. Iran had 30 days. It was a very, quite a difficult process, or a long, let's say, not difficult, but a long process that could allow Iran to raise things and others. So there are points that people that are involved in the details will come up with. But first of all, I don't know yet whether who is the working team of Witkoff. We, of course, know that on the Iranian side, there are people that are very knowledgeable and they were involved in the previous negotiations. And the question will be, what role will have the agency, the IAEA, probably will have a very important one, much more than in the JCPOA.
Okay, thanks for that. One journalist is asking that because the talks could take some time, how can the West be assured that while the talks are ongoing, Iran isn't continuing in its enrichment program or other components of the program itself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I didn't hear yet from the Americans saying to the Iranians, as long as we are talking, you stop enriching. I said it to everyone that wanted to listen, but I didn't hear it yet. It might happen, but this should be the first demand. Stop enriching and accumulating material. Of course, the Iranians can say that once there will be an agreement, they will take out everything, so that's not so important. That's one point. But the other one that is very important is the issue of the snapback. We didn't mention it yet, but the snapback has to be, it's October, but it has to be prepared from the point of view of regulations in the Security Council somewhere in the coming summer. So that's one of the reasons that we don't have too much time. We heard, I don't know if we heard that the Iranians have put a demand to the Americans, that one of the demands of the Iranians was to make sure that there is no snapback. Now, Mr. Witkoff had a meeting with the E3 representative in Paris before going to Rome. And I'm sure this issue was raised because the Americans cannot bring back a snapback. It's only the Europeans. It is a huge question. And I think unless there is a dramatic achievement in the dialogue between Iran and the US, it will be very difficult to not to raise the snapback. There is a possibility. I was trying to figure out if there is a possibility, a legal possibility, to postpone the snapback for half a year or for a year. I'm not yet sure, because at the end of the day, as everybody probably knows, the achievement of the snapback is that it doesn't allow Russia and China to use veto. If we go for a new resolution that postpones the snapback, it should be dependent on Russia and China, because it's a new resolution. So it's very complicated, and the timetable is very, very problematic.
Understood. Just as a refresher, because there are a lot of journalists who are new to the area in the last few years, you mentioned that there were additional issues, perhaps maybe red lines that Israel would have put in the past. Can you maybe remind those on the line what are those issues that they should be aware of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, as you know, the formal position of the Israeli government is that there shouldn't be an enrichment program in Iran. I think that, first of all, there are several problems with. First of all, let me say one thing. We are not in the situation we were in 2015. It's 10 years later. The program is much more advanced. It's very advanced. Actually, there is no barrier for Iran to take a political decision to go for a nuclear device. it's only their own decision. So we are in a complete different situation. Now, two issues that are very problematic. One is, of course, the sunset. This agreement shouldn't be for 15 years, which is, in 5 years we could be there. So that's one thing. And the other one is the issue of the advanced centrifuge. That's a very dramatic issue. On one hand, nobody can take from Iran the knowledge that was reached in the last decade on using advanced centrifuge, and that is a dramatic change from the program that was in 2015 with the IR1, that was a very old system of centrifuge. So this is an issue. I read somewhere that there is a kind of a demand to take out all the advanced centrifuge. It will be very difficult. I assume the Iranians will not accept it. They might bargain with this issue that they will not be enriching or something like that, but I don't see them taking out the centrifuge, and of course I don't see them storaging them. The whole issue today is much more difficult, and the timeline is much shorter. So we are in a quite difficult situation.
Right. So that's on the one hand, but on the other, and another journalist is pointing out that things have also changed on the ground for the Iranians in that they're in a very different situation given the direct confrontations between Israel and Iran last year, specifically targeting Iranian air defenses. Does this put Iran specifically in a different negotiating position vis-a-vis the West in these talks, or do you think it's a completely separate two issues?
No, it's not separate, and it's a very important question. Iran is in a different situation, in a worse situation, and I can assure that one of the reasons that Iran decided from the beginning that they want to go for an agreement was, of course, also the economic situation, which is very, very difficult, much more than it was 10 years ago, and that is the threat, the military threat. No question. They understand that, first of all, they understand that Israel is in a different situation today. They don't have their proxies that can threaten and deter Israel. They don't, even if they repaired, and I assume they have repaired parts of the system that was hit by Israel. It's not, they know that Israel knows how to handle this, the anti-aircraft and anti-missile system. From the military point of view, they are in a very weak situation. And that is part of and they understand that they don't have to guess. It's Trump who said 2 months ago, if you don't go for an agreement, Israel will attack. He said it openly in front of the prime minister. So I think Iran understands that the military option is much more concrete than ever before, and their military situation is weaker, much weaker than it was ever.
So this is a perfect segue to reports that we had heard over the last few days, specifically in the New York Times. Among the writers was, of course, Israeli correspondent Ronen Bergman, in which it was reported that the Trump administration actually pushed off an Israeli strike on Iran. Do you think that this timing was random? Was it part of this larger getting ahead of the talks? And a second question, which several reporters have already put forward, is what would be the red line for Israel in these talks before attacking Iran specifically? There are a few questions in that field, so maybe we can approach that subject.
Okay, so first of all, I'm not sure who leaked this information, but in any case, it's interesting. What I think is that, first of all, it's important for the Americans to make sure that the Iranians believe that there is a real intention on the side of Israel to attack. And I think they might believe it, and I think there is more and more voices are in Israel that support an attack. more and more voices that think that Israel was never in a better situation from the point of view of the balance of power between Iran and Israel. The big question will be at that time, and of course the fact that that there is a feeling that the open channels between the US and Israel are much more open today and much more supportive than they were before. Yesterday there was a conversation, telephone call between the president and the prime minister. From the report I read from the American side, my impression is that one of the reasons was, as it was expressed openly, to say there is no daylight between Israel and the US. We are on the same page, and everything is a common evaluation and common policy. And I think it is important also for the US to make sure that Iran believes that this is the situation. So it might be correct to say that both sides, Israel and the Americans, enjoyed from leaking this information. We'll see how the things develop. I think there is a very strong support in the Israeli government and the prime minister himself for an Israeli attack.
Okay, one journalist is asking if the US is confident that it knows about all of the Iranian sites when approaching these talks, intelligence-wise.
I think so. First of all, there is still on a low level, but there is still inspection of the IAEA. So all those sites are known. The Iranians for some years already are building a new one very close to Natanz, which is they say that it's not going to be for enrichment. We believe it is going to be for enrichment, even deeper than Natanz. But there is always 1% or even less, but there is a secret site somewhere. As far as I know, neither Israel nor the Americans believe there is, think there is, or know that there is such a site. But one cannot exclude it completely. It's very difficult because of the inspection that was. But you know, Iran is a huge country, full of tunnels. So it might be might be that there is something. But other than that, the Americans and the Israelis know exactly.
So the working assumption is that there are things that we don't know. We know that we don't know.
Yeah. we cannot you know,
rule it out. Yeah.
And on the other hand, we cannot develop our policy on something that we don't know.
Right, that's a whole another philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
Sima, we're almost out of time. We have, I think, time for just two last questions that have come in. One on your personal opinion, whether we can actually reach this deal, or do you think eventually, you know, when push comes to shove, we might have no choice, by we, I mean by the Israeli establishment, to intervene in the way that we've discussed?
It's very difficult to evaluate, but since I'm always looking on interest of the sides, I think there is a very deep interest on the American and the Iranian. Actually, everyone except for Israel has a very deep interest in having an agreement. Also, the Russians and the Chinese. The foreign minister, Iranian foreign minister, went directly to Russia after Rome, and yesterday he was in China. So they are together in this way, in this conversation that they are having with the Americans. I think there are more reasons to believe that there will be an agreement. Of course, the question will be what kind of an agreement, but still we are in the very initial steps. And both sides didn't get yet to the details, to the very problematic details. And the devil is in the details, and this is a huge problem.
Absolutely. And one final question, just about the most recent appointment of an Israeli American as, you know, the consul in the administration. Do you think this move is meant to signal something, or is this just a part of, a larger issue of what you were talking about before in terms of the no daylight between Israelis and Americans on this particular issue?
I'm not sure I recall your first sentence.
So the most recent appointee to the
Okay.
administration, I forgot her first name, but last name
Arab,
Saren, right? Who was
think so.
both an Israeli and an American. She's born in Haifa and is now advising the administration specifically on the issue of Iran. What you make of it.
Yeah. First of all, I think that there are many nominees in the American administration that are very sympathetic to Israel. I'm sure she is as well. But at the end of the day, she's an American and was working in different places, and I'm sure she will be following the president and Witkoff. So I don't think it's a sign of something different from. From an American that was not living in Israel before, something like that. I don't think so.
Okay, we actually do have 2 more minutes, and one question just came in, so I will
No problem.
steal it for you. One journalist is asking, you said a second ago that Israel's really the only party not to have an interest in a deal, and if this deal would actually guarantee the end of the nuclear issue, would Israel be on board? If that's something that
I tell you something. Israel would not prefer a deal because Israel believes, I think, if there is a deal, it will be a compromise between the Iranians and the Americans. There is no deal that you come and say, take it or leave it. And the compromise from Israel's point of view has its own flaws. And the question will be, is it going to be better than the JCPOA or would it be the same? And how long it will be? So I think, I personally don't think that this is the right direction. I think to think about an agreement. I think an agreement is a good thing. It depends on the details of the agreement and depends of how sure you are that for many years, long years, Iran will not develop the capability to break out. And this is, I think, very important. Of course, what bothers Israel is not only this, is also what Iran will get from an agreement. We have to understand that Iran will get rid of sanctions that are related to the nuclear. And the most important for Iran will be one, export of oil, free export of oil, and revenues, getting back the revenues to Iran, which they cannot do today, and the use of the international banking system, SWIFT and others. So even if I don't know if anyone read the article that was published by Iranian Foreign Ministry. He had to give a presentation in Carnegie, and then when he was told that he needs to also to answer questions, he decided not to do it, and he published what he prepared. When you read what he published, and I think it's important to mention, it looks as if the Iranians understood what is important for Trump. And therefore, what he suggests to the Americans is $1 trillion projects in Iran. As he said, we want 19 or 20, they have already one, 20 nuclear reactors, and it's a lot of money. And so there was on one hand an attempt to relate to what the Iranians believe that is important for Trump. On the other hand, it's something that is important for Iran as well. Foreign investment is very important. All the infrastructure in Iran is in a very problematic situation because of lack of investment. So from our point of view, the fact that Iran will have more money and will have more flexibility to get investment, foreign investment than others, is of course, as long as the same regime is there, is not a good development.
Right. I mean, and also ultimately, at the end of the day, by removing the sanctions and by strengthening the Iranian economy, we could bring ourselves in the same position where we were before the previous deal, in which they no longer have an incentive to stay in a deal, and
No,
it
they had
creates.
let's be fair. They had the incentive and they were in the agreement. It's Trump that decided to get out of the agreement. So we don't have any proof that they wanted to leave the agreement. And actually, they were adherent to the agreement these 2 years, that not more 2.5 years. But I think what is very problematic is the fact that they will have a lot of money to support Hezbollah, to support Hamas, to support the Houthis, and they will continue to be, and not only that, and that will be my last sentence. I think it's important to mention also, a lot of Iranian people are saying, what interests you is only the nuclear issue, and you are willing to give up on our freedom and our situation and to leave the regime strong and for years. And this is, of course, a huge problem.
Of course, it's countless attempts to overthrow the regime have been or to outvote the regime have been quashed over the years, and making a deal with the regime itself is a signal to the Iranian people
Yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah.
Sima Shine, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you're very busy these days. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone on my team, in particular Jonathan Beck, who facilitated this call. Have a good day, everyone.